from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay, will producers be getting a third trade aid payment? Hear what Secretary Sonny Perdue says. There's still lots of standing corn in the northern plains.
It's a new year, but the same crop. We take you to North Dakota coming up.
As another big trade deal moves closer to getting final approval. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. One day after signing the Phase 1 trade deal, another big trade deal, the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, is headed to the president's desk.
The yeas are 89, the nays are 10. The bill is passed.
The plan passing the U.S. Senate on Thursday. Republicans wanting to push the deal through the chamber before the start of the president's impeachment trial. Both Republicans and Democrats saying the deal is an improvement over NAFTA, which has been in place since 1994. For producers, the deal gives U.S. dairy farmers more market opportunities in Canada. U.S. poultry producers will have expanded access to Canada for chicken, turkey, and eggs. One Canadian canola grower telling us NAFTA needed to be updated.
Supply management crew wouldn't like it very much. There was some dairy concessions, right? I would say, as a grain farmer, it didn't really affect me a whole bunch, to tell you the honest truth.
The agreement still needs the approval of Canada's parliament. Commodity markets continuing to trend downward on Thursday. Traders still not overly thrilled with details of the Phase 1 trade deal with China. President Trump taking to Twitter about the agreement, calling it one of the greatest deals ever made, adding, quote, "The farmers are really happy with the new China trade deal and the soon-to-be signed deal with Mexico and Canada." The two-year deal calls for China to buy $200 billion in U.S. goods, specifically $40 billion a year in U.S. ag. There are also promises to do more to protect American trade secrets. But the deal leaves in place tariffs on about $360 billion in Chinese imports.
We made tariff adjustments for Phase 1, which you are aware of. And regarding Phase 2, to quote the president, much of the success of Phase 2 is going to depend on the success of Phase 1. So if the agreements are accommodated and adhered to, that's going to make Phase 2 a lot easier in the president's view, and I think he's absolutely right about that. I don't want to predict about future tariffs and so forth. You take these things one brick at a time.
President Trump says Phase 2 negotiations will start immediately. Other items observers were quick to note regarding the trade agreement with China. If China fails to comply, the U.S. can impose or reimpose tariffs. But China can't retaliate with tariffs. But China can choose to leave the agreement. There is also concern about China's purchases of American products being, quote, based on market conditions. Some saying China has reneged on agreements in the past, but Phase 1 supporters say at least now the U.S. has an enforcement mechanism. Even as we discuss expectations for purchases in the Phase 1 trade deal, the Secretary of Agriculture telling me farmers can still expect one more trade aid payment. During an interview with me following the Phase 1 signing at the White House, Secretary Sonny Perdue said a third payment from the 2019 MFP program will be made. But that would likely be the final payment for farmers impacted by the trade war with China.
I absolutely do expect that, and I don't know where the fake news has come from over the anxiety of that maybe not being there, but it certainly didn't come from us. There's been questions from the Hill and from other industry there, but my expectation is that the president will direct OMB to fulfill that third tranche of the commitment of the 2019 MFP payment. Now, I've told our producers all along that they shouldn't expect a 2020 MFP because they told us all along they'd rather have trade, not aid, and that's what the president has delivered.
While the secretary didn't give a timeline, previous reports have named February as a likely target for that payment to be made. While trade deals have weighed on producers' minds, the weather has continued to be a focus. USDA says 8% of corn and 2% of soybeans still need to be harvested. AgDay national reporter Betsy Gibbon is outside in the elements in a balmy Sterling, North Dakota. Betsy, you say you've seen standing corn for miles.
Well, Clinton, we've been talking about it, and now we're showing it. Corn that has yet to be harvested in North Dakota. And the producer I talked with said he will continue to harvest throughout winter. Chase DeWitt's combine won't be parked for long in Sterling, North Dakota. He's trying to get all of his corn crop harvested before spring.
Well, it became apparent that was going to probably be the case. I mean, when we had 30+ moisture corn, middle of November.
Even though he's not running today, he hopes to pick up when temps climb higher.
Now we're 8 below standing here right now. That's a little bit of a shock to the system, but at least the sun's shining, right?
DeWitt's isn't the only one. As of December 31st, USDA says just 48% of the state's corn has been harvested. Our crew seeing standing corn along I-94 for miles near Sterling and as far north as Minot, North Dakota.
The corn is a big issue. One told me they had 900 acres. Someone told me they had 2,000 acres. That's a big deal. And I think, like we talked, prevent planting next year. What do they have to deal with to try to get into those fields?
DeWitt says the moisture content for his corn is running at 21%. A shame, since he says the yield is above average, but test weights and moisture content bringing profits down.
We have so much time and money invested in this corn right now. By the time we take our test weight discounts, we're underwater on it.
Luckily, he has a dryer. However, other farmers don't in the state, which is a concern for DeWitt's.
If you took a 50-mile radius of where we're at, I bet I could count on both hands how many guys have dryers. There's very few operations that do.
DeWitt says he is a little concerned about prevent plant acres in 2020, especially since it's unknown when this crop will actually be harvested. Reporting in Sterling, North Dakota, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
And those crops may stay out in the field for even longer with snow and ice moving across the country. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman joins us with an update. Mike.
That's right, Clinton. This is a pretty big system, and it's got a little more cold air to work with than the last big one that came through. You can see that is snow and some ice mixed in as we start the day across the central and northern plains. By later today and into tonight, there's 11 p.m. Snow starting to move into the Great Lakes. Parts of the Ohio Valley, although the Ohio Valley really ends up with mostly rain, as you can see. And through the day Saturday, by the end of it, we're talking snow all the way into New England and most of the Great Lakes. In Steele, North Dakota, temperatures are warming up a touch, but this was taken at a feed yard early morning. Earlier in the week, when temperatures lingered around minus 10 degrees, shows producers sacrifice a lot to feed their cattle in those blistering temperatures. I'll have more in your forecast coming up in a little while.
Organic growers are finding new ways to help the planet, and in today's American conservation ag movement, that includes how the product is packaged for you. Wholesome Family Farms is launching a new Top Seal collection. It's 100% recyclable, and one packaging company at the forefront is GyroPack. It has developed fully compostable net clip bags as well as compostable welded bags. They're created using plants and other organic materials like cornstarch instead of plastic. So look for those soon at a grocery store near you. What does the soybean market need to see to move back into the green? We'll have some analysis coming up. And later, how one big gift could make the difference for many future farmers in the country. Rural bankers appear to be more optimistic, at least according to a new Rural Main Street Index. The overall index climbing to its highest level since June of 2018. It now stands at 55.9, above the growth neutral of 50. Only about 18% of bank CEOs reported their local economy was in a downturn. Bankers also reporting farm loans fell to the lowest level in almost 7 years. Traders continue to doubt China will be a quick buyer of U.S. soybeans, with prices about 40 cents above those offered in Brazil. And they're concerned that does not match up with China's insistence to buy only market competitive U.S. soybeans in the trade deal signed yesterday. Here's more from the CME as the market continues to grapple with that trade deal.
This is Oliver Slope with Blue Line Futures, coming to you from the floor of the CME here in Chicago with your grain market update. And we are seeing the selling accelerate here today. We failed against technical resistance 390 to 392, and we were going into that all-important signing of the Phase 1 deal, and that did fall flat. And this is something we've been talking about in our morning reports throughout the first half of this week. This was largely priced in and kind of set the tone for the potential of a deal that it was overpromising and under-delivering, and that phase one deal seemed to under-deliver, and so you're seeing the selling kind of pick up here. We're at the bottom end of the range, which I think might represent a decent buying opportunity on the first test, but you need to see this support pocket hold through the rest of the week. That comes in about 377 to 380. A break and close below here could potentially take us towards contract lows of 365 3/4 for that March contract. So that's what we're looking at. That's what you should be looking at too. This has been Oliver Slope with Blue Line Futures from the floor of the CME.
Jeff French with Top Third Ag Marketing, our guest in studio today. Jeff, let's talk about this soybean market because we have a phase one trade deal signed with China. We expect big sales of soybeans to start to pick up headed there. But traditionally, China's kind of winding down U.S. purchases here and starting to buy out of South America, right?
Yeah, I mean, seasonally here, you're in a part of the time where South American harvest is starting to begin. I mean, it's still got a ways here, but yeah, this is when they tend to wind down sales from the U.S. and bring it down to South America. Now, with the signing of phase one, how that is going to interact with it, I think the biggest thing with phase one is how we are going to enforce these purchases. We're expecting to see big, large bean and pork purchases, but they've also said the market conditions could dictate those purchases. So if U.S. beans are 50 cents over South American beans, do the Chinese come and still buy our beans at a much higher price? That's something that we don't know because we've never had a trade deal with China with phase one coming on board here today. So, it's encouraging. But again, yeah, seasonally, they tend to start moving down to South American beans.
And that South American crop is big. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be big.
It's projected to be record big. I mean, you're talking 122 to 124 million metric tons. That is a lot of beans. And they will have plenty of beans to export.
Now, there was also some discussion about whether China may buy our beans and then resell them somewhere else. Does that matter? Does the market care about that?
I think as long as it leaves the U.S. market and gets out of our pipeline, I think that's a positive. What they do with it from there on, I don't think the U.S. market will trade off of that. I think it's big that it gets out of our hands.
What are you going to watch over the next 2 or 3 weeks in this bean market?
Looking at the March beans, a close above 950 would be extremely strong. We've had a nice rally, 60, 65 cents off the lows here since December. That 950 mark has been resistance. We get above there, we could probably propel it up to 970, 980 area.
All right, it'll be something to watch. Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Jeff. We'll be back with more AgDay coming up here in just a minute.
For a special report on the grain markets, call toll-free at 877-TT-HEDGE. That's 877-884-3343. Precision Planting Winter Conference 2020. Sessions to help you maximize your farm. January 21st through the 24th. Visit ppwinterconference.com to register for this free event.
Happening right now, a dam in rural North Mississippi is in danger of failing. Officials have placed the Oktibbeha County Lake Dam under emergency watch. It's about 100 miles northeast of Jackson. The rain-swollen lake rose at least a foot, and there's concern what could happen if additional rains hit the area. Mike, we're seeing that again. Here we are in the kind of early part of the year, and already rains are falling and filling these reservoirs.
Right, and that's probably going to get a little bit of rain. Now, this is going to be a quick shot for those southeastern parts of the country as a line of showers and thunderstorms moves through. As we start this morning, though, you can see the last storm well off to the east. Pretty cold dome of high pressure there, although the next one's a lot colder, and you can see double barrel area of low pressure. It's the warm air where a lot of the moisture is going to be, but as that overrides the warm front, we will see that turn to snow and maybe a thin layer of sleet or freezing rain in some areas, so keep that in mind. That's usually just north of the warm front in most situations. You can see, though, by the time we get to late today, widespread snows over the northern Mississippi Valley, line of showers and thunder showers across parts of the southern plains into Texas. Next storm system starting to show up off the Pacific northwest coast. Heading through the nighttime hours tomorrow night as we head into the weekend, you can see from central, maybe even north central Indiana, Saturday morning southwestward, there'll be some showers, and even in the southern plains some thunderstorms. But north of there, it's mainly in the form of snow. Some areas go briefly to rain in the southern Great Lakes and then back to snow as the colder air moves in. And this is going to be some very cold air. This is a direct shot of Arctic air coming into the northern plains. plains. You've had a couple of them already, but they haven't come very far south. This one is coming farther south. You can see the cold front, excuse me, all the way into the southern plains by the time we get to the middle part of the weekend. There's a precipitation estimate over the past 24 hours or so. A lot of it in Texas. Always could use the rain there because parts of that area is still under a drought. You can see how that spreads toward the northeast over the next 36 hours. Snowfall, lots of it in some of the higher elevations in the Rockies already, but there's the storm system. The northern part of it's going to be snow. And that's where we see over the next 36 hours a fair amount of it coming down across the Great Lakes into New England. There's the temperatures this afternoon. Not overly bad, but the colder air is starting to come in. Tomorrow morning already below zero again in Bismarck, and you can see that colder air just keeps coming in because temperatures go down in Bismarck and Minneapolis as we head through the day. Wind chill is going to be pretty much the same idea. These are the feels-like temperatures. It's going to turn very cold behind that cold front. There's the jet stream, and you can see that shot of colder air, direct shot of Arctic air right there into the northern Great Lakes in New England as we start the week, and that overwhelms the whole eastern part of the country. It's going to turn colder all the way into Florida. We'll see about next week, maybe another storm system by the end of it. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. El Paso, Texas, first of all, partly to mostly sunny, high of 67 degrees today. Des Moines, Iowa, cold, periods of snow, high of 28. And finally, Utica, New York, colder today with clouds and some sunshine, high of only 16 degrees.
Ag leaders want to hear from you about the ethanol industry, plus a big case takes a sour turn for the U.S. cherry industry. Details next. USDA wants to hear from you about what's needed infrastructure-wise for higher renewable fuel blends. USDA is gathering the information to create a higher blends infrastructure incentive program. Now, the goal is to gain information that will expand domestic ethanol and biodiesel availability. Specifically, it wants information that will create, quote, opportunities to consider infrastructure projects to facilitate increased sales of higher biofuel blends. Comments are due on or before Thursday, January 30th. The United States International Trade Commission has ruled against the U.S. cherry industry in an alleged dumping case involving Turkey. The decision comes as a surprise to the industry after a final determination by the U.S. Department of Commerce last year said Turkey was flooding the U.S. market with a subsidized dried cherry product at less than fair value. 5 fruit companies had filed a petition last year against Turkey, claiming the practice had been going on for 3 years. A ruling in favor of the dried tart cherry trade committee could have resulted in a 630% tariff on Turkey. The industry can still appeal the decision. Coming up, a big donation could help future generations of farmers. Now, one very generous donation may transform an entire ag program and one college. Next. We're used to hearing about big donations going to athletic fields, hospitals, and business schools, but this week, a university in the Southern Plains received a multi-million-dollar gift for its ag college. Oklahoma State alumni Kayleen and Larry Ferguson rolled out a check for $50 million this week. They hope the gift from their family foundation will help transform the College of Agriculture Sciences and Natural Resources. Now, the funds will create a $25 million endowment for the college's operations and designate $25 million to kickstart a fundraising campaign for an innovative research and teaching building. The university hopes to raise another $50 million for a new $100 million facility expected to start construction next spring.
And so we're just very thankful, and we want to pass that legacy of education, agriculture, the importance it has in the industry today. I mean, they need employees. The employees need a place to get a good education in those majors, and we feel that Oklahoma State will provide that.
Well, agriculture is how this university got started, so of course one of the lead gifts should be in agriculture. And yet agriculture is one of those industries that often goes unheralded, and so it's really moving to see someone make this kind of a commitment to the very basic functions of agriculture and natural resource management.
Now, Larry is the retired president and CEO of Schreiber Foods, the world's largest employee-owned dairy company headquartered in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He and his wife met while students at Oklahoma State and credit the college for much of their success. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. It's been part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.